Welcome back. We are on day 2 of our 25 days of soul work, unwrapping courage and giving a gift to your soul for this season. So, thank you for joining me again. Jelisa Dallas here. I am an author, coach, and consultant where I help individuals and organizations break barriers to their success, bolster their belief, to develop confidence, and help them to build brave and courageous behaviors so that they can optimize their lives and create a sense of belonging internally and externally in community. So thank you again for joining me. We're going to just jump right into it. Oh, but before I do that, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also share this with someone you know, as well as be sure to download our complimentary resource at www.gobravellc.com. Again, that's www.gobravellc.com so that you can follow along with us on this journey. So without further ado, because I don't like long introductions, soul work. Last time we talked about the story that changed everything. And if you want to know the details, go ahead and watch day 1 where I kind of broke that down for you. But it was the story that really pushed me into the intimacy with God that I truly, truly needed. But that push was not necessarily easy, which led me into the soul work process and me explaining what the soul is and giving you the definition of soul work, which is the process of healthy disruption followed by an implementation of discipline to master our mind, will, and emotions. Yes, a healthy unsettling followed by a shift to safety of our inner world. So really, soul work made me uncomfortable. It made me sit in the middle between productivity and rest. And that middle space, be it that I'm a doer and I like to be on the go, I don't like to sit for very long. It was a struggle for me. I was met with resistance because, of course, who enjoys change when you can't control it? Not me. I was also met with inauthenticity. And granted, I wasn't lying or being completely out of integrity, but because I didn't allow myself to sit in those restful moments to allow God to pour into me, I was not fully showing up as myself. I was leaving out major parts of me, major parts of my story that would have resonated with people and been relatable. Instead, I just shared information and didn't connect that to experiences that I had to really build a level of influence with what I was sharing. I also found myself fighting between who I was and who I was being called to be. And that brawl was, there was a lot of hair pulling, a lot of tugging, a whole lot of stuff going on there. But then after all of that, and with those things coming in and out in different parts, because these were stages of my unsettling, stages of this middle part between productivity and rest, I was eventually met with peace. And it was that deep breath kind of peace, just like I just did. Not the one where you like, oh, I'm tired. And it's the one where it's just like, oh, it's just a relief. It's not a frustrated type of letting out of a sigh, but it's that relief. It's that finally. And it just felt so good to be in that peaceful place. Now, I will admittedly say, sometimes I found myself back in that middle space between productivity and rest. But as soon as I went through that resistance and that inauthenticity and that brawl, I found peace again. And it's like a cycle that comes around every so often when I try to do too much and try to do things in my own strength. But God reminds me that his perfect peace is what he wants for me. His rest is what he wants for me, for all of us. And his example is set forth in the beginning. In Genesis, he created the earth, created the world for which we live in 6 days and rested on the seventh. Why don't we take that same advice if he established it from the beginning? So without going down that rabbit trail of rest, because that's a whole thing that can deserve its own series episode. But for today, we're continuing our conversation on soul work. And so that time between productivity and rest was where I had to deconstruct my emotions and get real with myself. A lot of times we are not honest with where we are, and that's why we end up being stuck and stagnant. So soul work provoked deep introspection and an examination of my heart. I had to be very, very reflective. So in soul work, there's a series of frameworks and practices combining support, strategies, systems, sustainability tools, and a standard of living, all with the intention of disrupting self-sabotage. So back to definitions, for which I love. Self-sabotage, if you don't know what it means, it is a behavioral dysregulation. It is blocking or inhibiting the actualization of personal success and accomplishments. Bluntly, it's a form of hatred and destruction of self. Yes. Believe it or not, we perpetuate this self-sabotaging behavior on the back end of feeling we're not good enough, that we are the problem, that no one will ever love us. All of those lies are what fuel self-sabotage. Granted, some of that has to do with past traumas and experiences that we've had, but those lies filter into our present and create self-sabotaging behavior. The one definition or the example that resonated with me the most about self-sabotage is that it became a conflict between my desire for achievement of success while at the same time fearing success. That bumping of heads that, again, keep us stuck and stagnant. So think about what self-sabotaging behavior you might be possessing that's keeping you from getting from where you are to where you want to be. So in the stages of self-sabotage, we experience avoidance, as I've talked about before, awareness. And these two areas are what we're going to hone in on for this series. Because if I were to do everything, it would probably be a year-long process. But just for the time being, these 25 days, we're going to talk about getting us out of avoidance and getting us to a place of awareness where we have an idea of, okay, this is how I can move forward. Also in these stages of soul work is admittance, acceptance, adjustment, alignment into the fullness of who God is creating us to be, do, have, and give, and then advancement so that our lives, our families, our work, our business, and the kingdom of God can move forward. So we start with the foundation of identifying self-sabotaging behaviors. As I mentioned before, I gave you a definition. It is the form of self-hatred in a sense. So, for example, the refusal of help, codependence, unrealistic expectations, a need for control. In this space, we have to get out of our own way. We have to identify what's holding us back and find where we can break that hold. Ultimately, this is the overarching problem that we are trying to find a solution for. So that's the initial stage of this soul work process. Then that's followed by interpreting the depth of our behavior with support. This is where we admit and accept help, where we get an assessment of our readiness for change. So I don't know about you, but so often I hear a lot of people say like, yeah, I'm ready for change. Yet when faced with that change, they tend to run away. It's like they want the more, they want the bigger and the better and the best and the greatness, but change scares them and leave them tucking their tails and running away. And so I believe if we know and understand what change requires, we are able to do it more effectively. A lot of people will say, well, when you know better, you do it better. Well, I have a differing opinion on that. And that is what's missing in the middle of knowing and doing better is the understanding. If we have no place to resonate with what we know to get to a place to what we do, it's going to be difficult for us to make that change and to do things differently. And so what we do know is that change is inevitable, it's universal, and it's constant. And I personally think that the best way to go about change is to initiate it. And this can help us dictate kind of the ebb and flow of control. So after this stage of being ready for change, we implement strategies for disruption. This is where we restore value to ourselves. Not that we ever lost value or that we didn't have it, but now we can see our value in a better light. God initiated and gave us value from the beginning and telling us who we are by way of his word. But when we're in sin, when we have disruptive behaviors or self-sabotaging behaviors of avoidance and fear and not wanting help and desiring control, that blinds us from being able to really see clearly what our value is in and of ourselves and how we can contribute that value to the world. Next, we move on to integrating systems to affirm self-concept. That is us answering the age-old question of, who am I? Who truly am I? And who am I called to be? What am I called to do? What am I called to have? And in that, who am I called to serve and give to from my overflow? A lot of times we start with the have, like, I want to have this and I want to possess that. And, oh, I want those material things, not realizing we have to become the person able to even sustain those things. Again, I can go into great depth about that, but we only have so much time. Here is where we get clarity on our purpose. This part of integrating systems to affirm self-concept, we come to know our purpose. And believe it or not, our purpose is not outside of us. It's not a matter of discovery outside of ourselves, because Dr. Miles Monroe talks about how we came into this world complete, full, and whole. It's just been the distortion of the enemy and the lies of the enemy that make us think that we're not complete and whole. And so all of these lies that we tell ourselves makes us believe that purpose is outside of us, when in actuality, it's inside of us. As I mentioned in the first day about our gifts are innately inside of us. It's a part of the soul of who we are. And so with us getting clarity on our purpose, then also we get clarity on the trajectory of that purpose, that progress, and the gifts that we possess. Then after this follows our inspection of sustainability and our mindset shift. If we don't shift our mindset or renew our mind with God's word, it's going to be difficult for us to keep self-sabotage at bay. This is where we recognize and respond. Now we have strategies to disrupt self-sabotage when we know it's coming, because it's going to keep coming. Because again, disruption means that we have the tools to address it as it comes, then we need to respond accordingly. This is how we learn to regulate our soul. And then finally, innovate to support transformative action. At the end of the day, we want to change our habits, routines, and disciplines, ultimately to acquire a new behavior. Because if we are still doing what we've been doing in our past, we're going to still experience the same results we've been experiencing. So these are the practices, the frameworks, and the stages of soul work. And I hope that this has given you a little bit more clarity as to what the soul work process is. And I look forward to connecting with you on tomorrow, day 3, as we talk more about how soul work can change your life and help you to confront the barriers that's keeping you from where you are to where you want to be. Again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with a friend, and then also download our complimentary resource at www.gobravellc.com. Later.